welcome to Night Clerk Radio, episode 149. I'm Burke, joined by Ross, and this is a very exciting time, starting Boards of Canada month. Boards of Canada, Ross, are one of those bands that we both love, have somehow never done for a variety of reasons I've talked about on previous episodes, largely being just dumb about what we talk about on the show. But we're going to do it because they had their first album in like 13 years. We want to talk about that. And I was like, well, fuck it. Why don't we also just talk about as much, just cram as much discussion as we can on Boards of Canada retrospectively into another episode.
Yeah.
That'll be our month. Be easy, right? You don't have to think about it too much. And I'm curious to see how long this goes. You know, we don't plan or script anything. It's just chat vibes.
Or we take some notes ahead of time, but yeah.
Yeah, there's notes, but like, I mean, people script podcasts, you know, and just like read them into a mic.
Losers.
Yeah, it depends on format. I think if you're like one guy doing a solo history podcast or something, I kind of get that, but
yeah.
I don't know. I didn't really script my solo Patreon. I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't stick to it anyway. I would go off script pretty quick because I'd be like, oh, who wrote this? An idiot wrote this. And I would just start talking about other stuff. But that's kind of what I'm doing now because I had a whole intro planned and here we go. I'm already off topic. But I actually, the more I started like revisited those old albums and read about the band and dug up some information and like revisited some topics, I'm actually like extra excited for today. I think it's going to be really, really good because way back when, we've been doing the show like 6 years now, right? From first record.
That sounds right. Yeah. Because we started, we recorded before.
It was like just before COVID. It was fall of 2019.
Yep.
Was when we first recorded episodes. You know, we had this idea of like, these are our pillars, right? These are the pillars of our show, which are hauntology, plunderphonics, and nostalgia, right? And BOC is like a perfect intersection of all of those. A great way to introduce them. I'm hoping we this is like other than doing, I don't know, like Trent Reznor and Quake and some other examples, this has like probably a much more popular band than we typically discuss.
Yes. That is
no offense to all of our lovely vaporwave friends. It's just, it's a different world. So I'm hoping maybe we get some new people. It's a good opportunity to like revisit those because we haven't talked about them in a while. Maybe like re-explain them in like a better way and then talk about Boards of Canada and how it relates to that. So if you afford me a few more minutes of talking, I think I just want to do like a 1 paragraph or less introduction of each. Feel free to interrupt me, chime in, add anything incomplete. And I'm going to kind of go through it in like, to me, what is order of complexity or like order of intuitiveness, right? So like the simplest thing is just plunderphonics, right?
Yes.
And plunderphonics just comes out of the term comes out of a John Oswald essay, 1985, plunderphonics, or audio piracy as a compositional prerogative. And it defined this concept of like music as its own instrument, building music out of sample sources, transform them, sound collage. He was not really into like making it totally unrecognizable. Like it should form anew, but you should still be able to kind of tell the parts. Sort of in the same way you should be able to hear like a saxophone in a recording, right? You should be able to hear your Michael Jackson sample before the Canadian government comes and destroys all your CDs. And this is, of course, an important foundation of sampling in, especially the rise of like digital samplers being like crucial to hip hop, to chopped and screwed music in the 90s, like the Avalanches, Negative Land would be early examples that have come up before on this podcast. You know, later one being like Girl Talk, who I really like, and like Neil Cicierega we've done slamming together. And it's interesting because, of course, Boards of Canada, heavy samplers. We'll get into like exactly what they sample. It's a wide variety of stuff. But where they become interesting, which we'll talk about in more detail, and just to keep in mind, is that they are much less about the visibility of the source. Like Oswald talk about more like the spectrality is a term that comes up. I think Adam Harper had a term like the Society of the Spectral or something. It was like a pun on Society of the Spectacle. I am blanking on it, but I'll look it up in silence while you're talking at one point. but because like especially those early albums are like, I don't know, it's not really sound collage. It's like these like micro corroded samples, and they're much more unrecognizable, I think, than like plunderphonics comes into, but it is like a key component. So this idea of sampling music as its own instrument is really where we're going to go with this. So that's plunderphonics. You have anything you want to add to plunderphonics?
Yeah, I mean, and briefly, I think Boards of Canada is kind of like the high watermark of plunderphonics as music. Like I can't think of any group that performs plunderphonics music better than Boards of Canada. Like you could argue the Avalanches, but I think the Avalanches, brilliant and beautiful music, but like their idea of plunderphonics is to blend all of these sources so much it becomes an entirely new thing. But in Boards of Canada, you do have that sometimes in Boards of Canada. But Boards of Canada is a master. They're masters of taking a single source, taking a single sample, and using it to punctuate music, or using it as melodic or rhythmic elements in a piece. Like every way you can use plunderphonics, they do, and they've done it like perfectly. I mean, there's some samples that still give me shivers on my spine when I listen to them in some of their tracks. Like, it's incredible to listen to them, and like being exposed to them at a young age, and like listeners like, holy shit, this is amazing. I could get more of this, and that's probably one of the big reasons I'm a big fan of plunderphonics as a musical production technique is through them. But yeah, so like, if you want to know what plunderphonics is, like, listen to Boards of Canada. Like, this is, the masters of plunderphonics.
Yeah. I can't do the whole episode on plunderphonics, but one other quick point, and I'm going to move on. One other thing that I think is interesting about them is that the way in plunderphonics to me always has like a mischievous side of it, like Negative Land and like real cheeky. Sure. Or Neil Cicero, right? It's a comedy plunderphonics, right? It's like, it was very funny that I mashed 20 songs together, with All Star in an album or whatever. And I think they have a little bit of that, but also they have like a lot of just like really just serious use of samples that stands out to me. So that's something else we'll keep in mind when we talk about the albums proper. So that brings us to our second pillar, which also is pretty easy. Everyone's intuitively familiar with it. That's nostalgia. Of course, that comes, I think a really good reference for this is Boehm's text, The Future of Nostalgia from 2001. And in that they define sort of two forms of nostalgia, which we can keep in mind for this discussion, because nostalgia is, nostos, the home, and algia, the longing, the longing for home is nostalgia. And so they define restorative nostalgia. And this is when we talk about nostalgia being like a crypto or even overt conservative force. This is restorative nostalgia of like things have changed and we must go back. I need to go home, right?
Yeah.
I need this to revive how things used to be because some conspiracy took that origin away from me. And very seriously, I want to go back to it. Yeah. And then algia, the longing, is reflective nostalgia, which is just like, I think they have a great phrase in there, which is patina of time, I think, which I really liked. Into the details and the symbols of the past, thinking about them, longing for them, but sort of understanding you can't go back. Yeah. And of course, Boards of Canada being in the latter of the two, right? There's a lot of decay, irony, ambivalence, distortion, maybe a little bit for some of the early samples. You could say like a little bit like I don't know if they want to go back, but definitely just sort of this missing, especially if you look at what they sample, which is a lot like early on was sort of like childhood memory stuff, like information films, of course, where the name comes from. We haven't even gotten into the band's introduction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Of course. But
that's like, what I was thinking was like, a lot of their sources, the things they plunder from are from media aimed at children or recordings of children, actually, children talking or singing. And the Film Board of Canada, because even though they are Scottish brothers, they spent a lot of time in their childhood in Canada growing up. So like very familiar with these old 1970s educational films produced by the Canadian government. So that's exactly the nostalgia. Like they're literally logging and commenting on their own desire for, a happier childhood or that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep. And I think the other important thing is they sort of have this idea of like artificial nostalgia or memories of memories. Like I think they're like a good proto example of that. Of sort of
memories of memories,
memories of memories, and sort of taking what their childhood memories are and like by sharing them out to people, you get kind of this shared collective recollection, even though it's not truly yours.
Yeah, it's like when we talk about mall-soft music, you would like, I remember this, even though you've never been to that particular mall or heard that track before. It's the exact same kind of thing of that
Yeah, I consider them like a proto version of that. Because they do. I mean, 1998, they're way ahead of
Yeah. No,
all that.
Yeah, their connection to their influence on vaporwave is undeniable. And like, would there even be vaporwave without Boards of Canada? I don't know, but like, it would certainly sound different as a genre.
Yeah. Okay. So then the third one is the big one. It's going to be a little vague. So the problem is like plunderphonics and nostalgia are things you can like intuitively point to. They're like techniques. They're things. They're feelings. Kind of everybody knows. Hauntology is more of a philosophical term turned music criticism term. Criticism in the sense of like studying and understanding, not being critical of course. So hauntology is what we're talking about when we say music is haunted. There's this past, memories of a memory. They might be imaginary. And those memories of a past that are kind of fake and imaginary create ideas of futures that will never happen. And this comes out of Derrida, Spectres and Marx, early 90s, shortly after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We don't have to get into like this kind of technical details. We've done whole episodes on them. But it is about how like this constantly haunted by this nostalgia for a past and like a future that was taken away from us. So I think crucial concepts for talking about Boards of Canada, knowing sort of Mark Fisher and Simon Reynolds, who really took this idea and ran with it as understanding like a rising era of music in the aughts. So Boards of Canada like predates them. And like Fisher never really wrote about Boards of Canada directly. When he talked about hauntology, it was really like Burial, who's another band I would love to do if we're going to break the glass on doing big bands.
Yeah.
Burial, Ghostbox, a record label who we did.
Yes.
The Caretaker, of course, we've talked about, I think, and also sneaking in some other stuff like Basinski and whatnot.
Fun fact, the Caretaker's record, made his own little record label, and BOC released a track on it. So, which is mentioned in the Iceberg video, which we'll talk about later, but like, yeah.
Okay.
So they're connected to each other.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me in the context of Boards of Canada, because I was like, I'm sure Fisher wrote about them, but he never did. They're really more of like a precursor or anticipator, especially around the time. I think also that was probably not helped by their release schedule, because I think a lot of this writing started kind of between records.
Oh, yeah.
For them, which we can talk about. But, I think it was really later people like Reynolds and Adam Harper and stuff who wrote about them more directly in the context of like hauntology and people who are like inspired by those two is where they come up later. So I think the really key point is like this failure of the future in a past that doesn't exist.
Yes.
Continuing to come out in art.
Yeah.
That's the key takeaway for hauntology, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the failure of the future is, in broad, we've always thought like, you could always describe like what a particular decade was for most of the 20th century. The 40s were like this, 50s were like this, 60s were like that. And then like ever since the turn of the century, you can talk about like the pre 9/11 era and post 9/11 era and then the global war on terror. But then it just kind of like becomes sort of, it's not clearly as distinct. And there's no like people back in the 1950s were optimistic about the future. They thought the future would be like this, but there's not really much speculation about the future now because people are more worried that there won't be a future,
Yeah, there's not a lot of like flying cars type shit.
Yeah. And anytime you see that, it's almost always done by some sort of grifter, someone on a con, like trying to promote some snake oil technology that's not really going to help anybody. Oh, yeah, we'll put everything on the blockchain, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. Yeah. And this music speaks to people who like kind of, like feel like that they don't have a, we're the past inside the present, as Boards of Canada would say.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the sort of pillars of thought. I don't know if we're doing this in the best order, because now we're just going to get around to, I'm just going to quickly introduce the band and then I want to talk about music.
Yep.
Talking about their history or whatever, that's just reading Wikipedia. I don't want to be a read Wikipedia kind of guy at you. But just for completeness, Boards of Canada, two brothers, Michael Sanderson and Marcus Owen, from Scotland, lived in Calgary, as you said, for a while. The name comes from the National Film Board of Canada, I believe. It was the documentaries they watched and also sample heavily. We're going to really be talking. They had a bunch of like self-released EPs in the mid 90s, but I think we're really going to be talking about the big four, I would say, which are their first four albums. That's from Music Has the Right to Children in 1998 to Tomorrow's Harvest in 2013. Their music, as we've talked about, samples, but it's also a lot of like analog synths with like all kinds of tricks for pitch drift, reel to reel, like recording stuff back and forth between tape machines, like true tape decay, not just slapping a filter or like an effects bench on it. Although they probably would do that too. Downsampling, all this playing with tempo and playing with pitch, playing with like tons of layers of LFOs, but on top of like live drumming every so often to kind of trick you into like, oh, is this a sampled beat or not? Just tons of techniques under their belt they use to create some like really incredible, like experimental electronic music. I don't really think of it this way, but I guess it makes sense because to me, they're so like haunted, ambient, etc. But I naively never really thought of them as IDM, but I guess people do. And that's probably me just not knowing shit about electronic music outside of what I listen to.
Yeah.
So, pioneers in all of those regards.
Yes.
Anything else you want to talk about, like the band's history specifically? I know you were doing some like some research, some iceberg digging.
So one thing is, Boards of Canada is a great band to get into if you really want to obsess over something and have like a never-ending amount of material to obsess over. Because they have a lot of singles and EPs, and a lot of those are like lost media or very rare and hard to find. The fan community about Boards of Canada are very... I feel like part of Boards of Canada's appeal is that your pattern recognition part of your brain just like activates and kind of like locks in, and like you can't let go of it because they have a love of the mysterious and a love of ambiguity, because they'll put in a lot of puzzles and obscure and occult references in their work. And so you can just dive into this. Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes to the Boards of Canada iceberg video I had that like explains, oh, they have this, they have this, they have this that people haven't found, or people found meaning in this. Yeah, it goes through the production techniques as well. There's, in fact, a fan wiki called the bachpages.org with a very extensive list of equipment that they know that people have confirmed that they use. And there's a lot of like speculation about, oh, maybe they use this. Part of the mystique is, of course, helped by the fact Boards Canada seldom grants interviews, seldom does photo shoots. They're very reclusive. They have their own little studio.
They like stopped recording live, stopped doing interviews, record in their own studio, like you're about to say. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that also lends itself to speculation, as we'll talk about on one album. Also, as soon as you introduce numerology, you bring out the weirdos.
Boy,
so
do
that's there's a lot going on there. Yeah. Okay. So let's just we'll get there. Let's do this album by album.
Sure.
So, like I said, we're doing Music Has the Right to Children, Giugotti, The Campfire Head Phase, and Tomorrow's Harvest. And the thing I kind of want to keep in mind is that I think as we work through these four albums, my discussion framework is that I think we're sort of walking through this actual like Fisher kind of hauntological loop of fond remembrance for the past through like literally by timing collapse of innocence into like fear of the future. And it lines up like perfectly with that. So Music Has the Right to Children, 1998, breakthrough album for electronic music, as I would say, Simon Reynolds in a 2018, like 20th anniversary kind of retrospective, called it the greatest psychedelic album of the 90s. And this is really that pure reflective nostalgia. Tons of samples of Children, Sesame Street, 70s documentaries, nature shows, like Doctor Who stuff is in there. Lots of references to like childhood memories and education. There's tracks called like Roy G. Biv, the mnemonic for like rainbow colors. It's a lot of stuff is like light and airy. It's pastoral.
Yeah, Roy G. Biv is a personal favorite track of mine. It is like, especially compared to the later work, surprisingly upbeat. So
there's a lot of like upbeat stuff. There's a track Aquarius, which is like one of the few times there's like a real notable plunderphonics type sample. There's like the song Aquarius from the Hair musical is in there and stuff. Man, it's a 10 out of 10 unskippable album. Yeah, and it is this idea of like bringing you along on memories of things you didn't experience, because these are two guys who are 10 years older than me, sharing their childhood, right? And we've talked about like this generational gap of memories, which I thought was interesting too, because like the Sanderson brothers, or I guess, Marcus goes by Marcus Owen, he goes by his middle name. They're like 10, 12 years older than us. Then you think about, we talked about, like Michael Brown, talking about like being a little bit older than people who do like vaporwave. So this is like in the opposite direction. Like I'm being carried into like their childhood.
Yeah. Yeah. The Gen X childhood.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. This album also has very much like not only did they sort of influence vaporwave, they would influence lo-fi hip hop because I think that it has this kind of lo-fi warm fuzzy sound. And they mention a lot of like intentionally detuned vintage synthesizers and drum machines and recording things on reel to reel and you know recording it back just to get that like scratchiness, that fuzziness of analog. So it's I can't count how many times I've listened to this album, and I will listen to it a few more 100 times probably in my life. Yeah.
And it holds up. It's one of those albums where like, I would still recommend it to people now, even if they'd never heard of it. It's not dated at all. It sounds as fresh. I'm sure I didn't hear it, of course, in 1998. I came to this probably 10 years late, but it just sounds out of time, right? Like, like frozen in its own little world. It's amazing. Still sounds great. Doesn't sound dated. It still holds up. It's not one of those ones where you're like, oh, I like that. Is it any good? And you listen to it and you're like, this is kind of mid actually. It's like, no, it's even better. And, you know, cause I listened to it. I don't think I've listened to it as much as you have until recently, but I was reminded how much I loved it because there was a viral video, I guess, I don't know, like 6 months ago, maybe more like a year. I don't know. I should look. Time sucks. Where there's a computer museum in California and they do like an example of early sound synthesis. Oh. And one of the things they do is they play Olsen, which is like one of the shorter tracks off this album, but like on like a computer from the 50s.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that
like
video.
Programmed in on punch cards.
Yeah.
And I was listening, I was like, God, this rips. Like even as like 50s era beat boops.
Yeah.
And like I went back and revisited it and I was like, God damn, this album is amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it's also one of the more ambient, like Boards of Canada is categorized in a lot of different genres, obviously, but one of them is IDM, intelligent dance music, because a lot of their songs are pretty hip hop, like they have a good beat, have a good flow, but like this is more ambient. This is more like let's vibe it out and just like soak in the soundscape. So yeah, it's for an electronic group. They're also extremely versatile now that I think about it, because they do have mastery in both like the hip hop and ambient genres. So yeah, absolutely check it out. The second album, just a couple years later, 2002, is Giugotti. That's how I've always said it. If it's said some other way, then I'm an idiot. It's fine. I think that's how you say it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 2002. And this is where we get into that Fisher flip. Recorded from 1999 to 2001. 9/11 happened during production, completely flipped the tone of the album for them. And this is like completely different in tone. It's much, much darker. It introduces themes that would come up later of like cults, conspiracy, the dark side of religion. There's like a lot of Branch Davidian, David Koresh stuff in here, and the Bishop Roden and whatnot. Waco stuff. There's much more like purposefully unsettling things of like, oh, here's like a self-help tape played against like crying children and stuff.
Do you know the title, what the leading theory of what the title means is?
No, hit me.
God of the Ground, which would be the devil. And if you look at the album cover, it is this kaleidoscopic image. And if you look at like it is sort of divided into a hexagon. A hexagon is kind of the symbol of Boards of Canada. But it looks like a giant humanoid figure rising out of the ground or standing on the ground in like a forested area, which, you know, is not obvious unless you kind of look at it, because it looks pretty abstract if you just sort of glance at it. But one of the influences of the album is Wicker Man, the 1973 folk horror film. Yeah, it is a very, you know, a lot of people, this is the satanic album. This is the devil worshiping album. But yeah, it's definitely the darkest, you know, one of the darker albums of
Yeah, this is where I was talking about like introducing like numerology stuff. You just introduced the hexagon they care about, the number 6 in general. You know, Hexagon Sun, I think, is like their personal studio where they record everything.
Oh, yeah.
6 is like a big one in numerology because 1 + 2 + 3 = 1 × 2 × 3. That's weird, bro. That doesn't just happen by accident. Yeah, 6, of course, being also, I think there's like some tricks they did with the runtime so that it was 66 minutes and 6 seconds. It's like a little gimmick on the runtime.
Yeah.
There's like the silent track, Magic Window, to drive up the length to the devil's number.
Yeah.
The interest in occultism. As soon as you bring out like I said, numerology, get weirdos. So there's like all these fan theories of, on music has the right to children. The word orange is said at this ratio of runtimes.
Oh my God.
And in Giogati, the word yellow is the same. Just fan people doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Two of the tracks in particular I love. I want to mention
Sure.
Music is Math, specifically because the sample, the past inside the present, is still I just listened to it this afternoon. It still sends shivers up my spine. It's so ominous. It's like I'm watching an unreleased David Lynch film. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
And like, again, this is what I'm talking about, using plunderphonics as high watermark. Like these android sounding vocals just activates my brains. It's great stuff. The other one is Gyroscope. If you listen to it with headphones, they use stereo really brilliantly. It sounds like the drums going around your head. The drum rolls are. So that's great. And they sample number stations, which are a whole thing. If you don't know what a number station is, I'm sure we've mentioned on the show at some point before, but like
they've come up because we've done Signal Wave, I think, that was like number stations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Briefly, number stations are shortwave radio stations that broadcast numbers and mysterious voices that are used by intelligence agencies around the world to send messages out to spies in an unbreakable system called a one-time pad cipher. So basically, unless you have the other half of the key, you can't possibly decrypt these messages. So it's safe to send them under, through public broadcasts. And like, there are all these recordings of number stations. They sound incredibly haunted, and they're just weird stuff. A great source of samples for hauntological music, turns out.
Yeah. They're creepy as fuck. Jump all the time. I think tracks are for me, in addition to the ones you said, I'm going to add The Devil's in the Details, which is the like really pitch stretched, like crying children and stuff. It's just, I'm going to go with the like creepiest ones of like that and like Dandelion.
Oh, Dandelion's good. Yeah.
Crazy tracks.
Oh yeah. Cause that has Leslie Nielsen talking about lava, and God, that's burned into my brain. Like that's from like a National Geographic film, like something about the edge of creation. And I found out, again, deep diving on these Boards of Canada fan videos, listened in it to reverse. The melody is much more complex in reverse. So like they do this stuff to it. Yeah. So like there's all these little like musical little secrets in these tracks.
Yep. Now we come out to our third album, The Campfire Head Phase, 2005. And here we have a pretty wild shift immediately as soon as you hit play in character and tone, where this album moves much more into like traditional sounds and song structure is how it's described. There's more folk guitar. It's not as irradiated to the point of unrecognizability of what's being like sampled and put together. It's much more tradition sounding. Now, one thing we should point out, this album is, I think, important to us accidentally because when we were on Hot Takes, Dave Van Cowboy was our promo music that we had.
Oh, sick. Yeah.
I think the song we picked to put on there.
Yeah.
I think that's what we went with.
Dave Van Cowboy is one of my favorite BOC songs. And I know that kind of might make me a casual to some fans because that's one of their first like big single that like
It had like a music video and everything, right?
Music
like,
video is great.
Yeah,
it's all like test footage of like some Air Force pilot doing like a high atmospheric parachuting test.
Yeah, it was Joe Kittinger's famous stratosphere jump.
That's it. Yeah. But it's this incredible track. It captures the feeling of soaring through the air, escaping the gravity well. Just this amazing build up and guitar solo in the first 2 minutes. It again also sends shivers up my spine. If I want something to invoke transcending something or majesty or awe, like this would be like the kind of track I would use to express that.
Yeah. The album overall is very interesting. It gets rid of, by Sanderson's own quote, like all of those samples, like children's stuff is all gone. All the cult references are gone. All like the cryptic quotes and stuff. It's much more organic. He talks about reducing the sound palette is a common quote from interviews. Yeah. Connecting more to like British folk, losing your mind by a campfire, compressing weeks into hours in the way acid messes with your perception. Which you do see, because like the first third is, it's like guitar folk.
Yeah.
And then the middle, there start to be some tracks they introduce that are a little more like ambient or like spacey. It's still not disturbing, but they lose a little bit of that structure and then it kind of comes back. So, and what's interesting, one last point about connecting to this larger discussion is, this comes after a very dark album, Giogati. And it's interesting that it came out just by chance around 2005, which is right when they would start to have this rise of talking about them as a haunted band. So right as there's this discussion about being hauntological, they release an album that's like hauntological, but in a very different way, much less like overt. It's the least hauntological to me of the four, if you could quantify that in some way, but it just dials it down. Yeah. It's kind of interesting that like that coincided with like a rise in talking about them in kind of the opposite way.
Yeah.
You know, sort of the way criticism kind of trails creation in some way. Yeah. There's sort of this cyclical back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, once you establish yourself as an artist, there's always this conundrum of keep doing the thing that made you popular or like try something new. And like, clearly they're trying something new. And I love this album, but like, yeah, it is different. It didn't review quite as well as the previous two.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
I mean, I get that it was like, I'm sure, especially at the time, like I said, I kind of came to their discography in the gap between this and Tomorrow's Harvest. So I didn't really have that sensation of like, oh, I heard Music Has the Right to Children in the 90s and it blew my mind. And now they're doing acoustic folk. You know, I didn't really have that sort of like expectation.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, given their lengthy, like the fact that they have the resources that they can just like spend as much time as they need to make something they think is worth releasing is great. Like the fact that the rare artist that is allowed to mature and sort of like make work at their own pace instead of having to like, oh shit, bills are due, I need to go do something real quick is great. And so like, yeah, you can kind of see how Campfire would influence later albums. So you could see how, building their sophistication and skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know though. Otherwise, I don't know if I have a whole lot to say about this album. I don't think it like as much as I like listening to it. I guess I get that other than like a few tracks, we talked about Dave and Cowboy, Chroma Key Dreamcoat is like this one of the first tracks here, like one of these hypnotic guitar riffs is kind of interesting. 84 Pontiac Dream is kind of like a cool early, or I guess at the time of the rise of like a hypnagogic track, like a proto hypnagogic pop type track, which I appreciated kind of listening to again for this. But yeah, I don't know. I like it, but I definitely don't revisit it in the same way as others.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because listening to it for this, I was like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
But I
well, it doesn't have that, like, I guess that pattern recognition, like brain candy that like activates, right? Like when you get like something with a number station recording and there's like, ooh, like you just lock in on that and you kind of obsess.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Like Music Has the Right to Children has so much to lock in. I know you're talking about like pattern, number station stuff and like Giugotti, but like for me, Music Has the Right to Children has so much to lock in on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, kind of a little basilisk hack for you, just as a treat.
Yeah. So that brings us to our fourth and final album we'll be discussing on this episode, which is 2013. So a big gap in release schedule here of Tomorrow's Harvest. And this one is, again, a pretty big shift in what they're doing. Thematically, this comes into what I was talking about, completing that Fisher circle of like, nostalgia for the past, lost childhood, Giugotti, something changed, we're dark. We're kind of recovering, coming down from that in Campfire. And then this one is like worried about the future, nostalgia for lost futures, because this is like, there's tons of stuff about, they claim it's not post-apocalyptic, but it is about like decay, environmental collapse, uncertainty of the future. Collapse, I think, being kind of like the big theme and so, kind of the subsequent lost futures. And this one gets much more into the rise of being like cinematic in their music. So a lot of like explicit influences of like John Carpenter synth,
Italian horror films.
Yeah. Fabio Frizzi, the synth work of Wendy Carlos is mentioned in interviews, films, Michael Mann films and stuff. So that, and bringing in these collapse, decay, isolation. I think there's a little bit of doomerism, like proto-doomerism, because they're like, oh, it's not post-apocalyptic, but it is about an inevitable stage in front of us. Like this all has to go away. Yeah. At some point, it's not sustainable.
Yeah. No, like the single they released for the album, Reach for the Dead, had a music video, which is very reminiscent to me of like The Hills Have Eyes. It's like out in this desert. And this also like specifically, I believe, sampled the Italian horror Zombie. Yeah. So it's clearly, more darker, more horror related than Campfire. Being out in the desert, sweltering.
Yeah.
Lost.
Yeah. And again, just this idea of like Lost Future. So some tracks, you mentioned Reach for the Dead, which was like the big lead single. Some other tracks I really liked were like Sundown, Nothing Is Real, Palace Posey, Cold Earth, White Cyclosa. These are all kind of key tracks that I would just check out the whole album.
Yeah, of course.
No, like I give a few tracks off the top of my head that I like, but I think they're best taken in like as a cohesive whole.
Yeah. One thing to also mention is that this album was released with a alternate reality game, ARG, that included embedding. They released information to fan groups and, the fan rent and that kind of thing with distribution of 6 strings of 6-digit numbers. Once decoded, they would go to a website that had the release date for it. And then you had to find a password that would let you log into a website to get access to a video and pre-order the thing. So again, this sort of like mystery that they built up around the album release, which they will talk about in our next episode about Inferno. They seem to replicate it, but like again, ARGs, these kind of elaborate puzzles that have to be solved by a group of people, obsessing over it is not my thing. But I like learning about it after the fact. The breakdown is here's how this puzzle was sent to people, how they solved it. So good job. VOC.
And I remember these are being on even like Adult Swim and shit at the time. I feel like I remember seeing that in like 2012 or maybe even earlier. Yeah. I don't remember when they actually
started. The Wikipedia for the album does mention 4 of the 6 codes released to BBC Radio 1, NPR, Adult Swim, and a fan site, Twoism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's funny. But again, I think with this, also it could be a little bit worried about running time length for the episode, but I think that's kind of all I have to say about it. The other thing that's worth mentioning is in terms of like coming back to hauntology is the cover. Actually, for all of these albums, the covers are always haunted as heckers. But this one is, the city of San Francisco as your ghost. So like going from Music Has the Right to Children has like a family photo kind of like blurred out and manipulated to be anonymized in some sense, but childhood. And this one's like, this whole city's gone. Like everything you got, it's going away. we have not been good stewards of our technological development.
Terrible.
The worst. So I don't know. And anything else album music wise you want to talk about? I think I stand by my 4-album Fisher Arc hypothesis.
Yeah, I think that's a good catch. Let's see, what album was this one? Really like Everything You Do Is a Balloon. What album? I've been listening to them so much I can't. I'm mixing up what album is what album in it.
Yeah.
Let's see here. That was in High Scores. Okay. See, they have a lot of EPs. It was in High Scores and the 4th track of Bach Maxima, which is an EP of not a. It was only, like Bach Maxima was released 50 CDs and cassettes, and then like people obviously copied it and put it online so they could do that. So there's a lot of good tracks that are not in these 4 albums. They have a lot of little tiny releases they peppered throughout the years. So that's worth digging up. If you like Vaporwave, if you like, dark ambient, if you like post-rock and prog rock, like Boards of Canada sits at all these places. I'd be surprised if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't listened to Boards of Canada, get on it, man. Like, and you're welcome, like,
yeah. That's kind of what I was going to sort of closing thoughts are on sort of influence and lineage. Cause we talk about Vaporwave, of course, in this podcast, but like chillwave, hypnagogic pop, we've talked about Ghostbox and that whole hauntology scene. I have to imagine that they're important for all those people. I don't know, like a really interesting take on plunderphonics and hauntology.
Yeah.
Like truly this sort of buried haunted specter versus like fun, recognizable pop samples. I think if you had more time or another episode, I do think there's an interesting like compare and contrast in terms of approach to memory.
Oh, okay.
In something like Boards of Canada versus, I don't know, like so if you do like another big obvious band like Caretaker, right? And we've talked about, Boards of Canada is like manufacturing memories of memories, fuzziness of memories, and Caretaker is much more about loss of like literal loss of memories.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like it's like another form of erasure. It's like like tomorrow's harvest, you're reaping what you sow. is about like broad societal erasure. You know, there's like personal erasure through dementia.
Yeah.
So there's like two sides of that coin.
Well, we
like,
could also talk about them as they both the caretaker and boards of Canada interface with.
Are they in the back rooms?
They are both in the back rooms. Yeah. Both.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just okay.
Maybe I'll do a solo episode about the back rooms because it's.
Maybe you should do your solo back rooms movie review episode.
Yeah.
I'll gladly edit it and post it.
Okay.
You should
right.
send me a recording.
I will get on that. I have another idea for a solo episode or even a video essay, but
okay.
Yeah.
I have nothing against the back rooms. I'm just not going to go see a movie in theaters. So.
That's fair. It's
I'll watch it.
It's definitely a movie that like it was nice to see in a theater, but it's not a movie you have to see in a theater. Like like I saw Obsession 2. That's not a movie you have to see in the theater. It's a good movie, but it's not a spectacle.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right.
Boards of Canada, good.
They're good. I'm just going to go right into our outro because I don't know if I can play samples on it. I've been thinking about whether or not we can have samples on a Boards of Canada episode. I may just go for it. So if you just heard a sample.
Yeah. Well, maybe prep.
Because YouTube let me put it in the episode.
Yeah. Maybe prep a non-sample version. Like be able to pull those out if Spotify says no.
What I'll do, I'll have to do what we did on the Quake episode, which is YouTube is just like, we'll just cut these samples out for you.
Okay.
And I said, okay.
Yeah.
The whatever little robots, the little Matrix Sentinels that tear apart the ship in the Matrix come in and rip the sample out of your episode. No. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But if you did hear a sample, I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know what it's going to be. No matter what, thanks so much for listening. We hope you, if you've never checked out Boards of Canada, I really hope we've inspired you to go give them a listen. If you like them and you haven't checked them out in a while, I hope we inspired you to go check them out again. That's what happened to me. Getting ready for this episode. And if you love them and listen to them all the time, well, fine.
Yeah.
Good. We're in the same crew now. So, of course, next episode, going to be the rest of Boards of Canada month. We're going to do their new album, Inferno. It'll be a new music episode for June. That'll be exciting to talk about. I like it. Mm-hmm. It's good. I think there's an ability to talk about like a single album, maybe a little bit more than we covered any one album. In this episode, try to keep them about at most an hour. So it makes it hard to do like 4 albums really in depth.
Yeah.
But I feel like we hit all of our points.
Yeah.
If this interests you, you liked what we do, you want to hear more of it, we have a Patreon, Nightclerk Radio at patreon.com. We got a couple dozen bonus episodes, a Discord server you can crash. Like I said, other like solo episodes, writings, artwork, etc. Not necessary, but super appreciated, of course. You can also find us social media. I think Blue Sky is probably the best place to check us out. If you reach out to us anywhere else, I can't guarantee I'll get back to you in a timely manner. Sorry to anybody. I checked like X. Thankfully, it wasn't too late. But I checked X yesterday, actually, because I got like notices of like, oh, somebody's trying to log in from like Chechnya or something. That's not where either of us live.
Yeah.
So hopped on just to make sure. We have 2-factor and stuff, so it was fine. But Cat System Core had sent us a nice note because we talked about Empire of Light. And I was like, because I responded on Blue Sky. I was like, I'm sorry, get back to you late. But there's all kinds of messages from like Pacific Plaza from like, I was like, 137 weeks. That's 52 weeks a year. That's a while ago. Sorry.
Oops.
Simply on Instagram. Like I'll hop on Instagram by chance and somebody will have written me like 3 months ago, like, hey man, thanks for talking about the album. Like, oh boy, sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm terrible at all of this. You just have to take it.
Just join our Discord and just join our Patreon. Then you can.
No, you shouldn't have to pay to talk to us.
Or Blue Sky. Join Blue Sky. It's not as shitty as the others.
Nightclerkradio@gmail.com.
There we go.
I'll probably see that.
Yeah.
Anyway, however you do, just check us out, reach out to us. We really appreciate it. If you take a moment to click whatever, the like, follow, all that algorithmic signification nonsense, it does help. You do notice it. It is interesting whenever stuff gets shared because I'll hop on like our little dashboard on our podcast host service and I'll be like, randomly one day when we don't release anything, it's like, oh yeah, we got posted somewhere, Ross. Sorry, so we have like 1,400 downloads in the last week and we haven't released anything.
Oh yeah.
So somebody
somewhere linked us. Yeah.
Somebody linked us somewhere, or we're getting scraped for AI training. Who knows? Metrics look the same either way. So I'm going to take the brain chemicals. Not worry about it. All right. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you come back for Boards of Canada Month Part 2. We hope you check out these albums, and we look forward to talking to you next time. So once again, thank you so much. We'll catch you later. Bye.
Bye.